please.
So
Councillor Linder.
I guess for me what's really important is that we make our decision on facts. And so for me it's, yes, in some areas there's changes and some are in scope and some are out of scope. And I felt that it's been very carefully explained, the reasons why. Yes, a lot of areas have already in the past developed around transport nodes. And it's really important. Places like Takapuna are metropolitan centres. They are going to get more intense. And even 1.2 metres, that's a internationally accepted, what we call pedshed or pedestrian distance, 1,200 metres. So that's quite appropriate. So it's no surprise that some of these areas will have upzoning. But as we've heard, a lot of that upzoning is actually, some of it's just gone back to what it was before, which is quite interesting to hear. So for me also, I'm very pleased that we've got those extra clauses inserted there, because as we've heard, the ports process, when people were very, very upset about not being consulted, has actually helped to get a better understanding, a lot of people at the table, and worked really well. And we heard from Julie Stout about that today, that people with very differing opinions have got together and are starting to be able to discuss. And I think that in the constraints that we have, the legal constraints we have, we've already had the independent hearing panel chair has made a determination that says the requests for waivers for late submissions, both general and specific, are refused. So that's unequivocal. That's a fact. We can't change it. Even if we changed half the councillors here, we won't change the process. The new councillors will still have that same process. So for me, these clauses actually help us to heal our community, because it is really, it's terrible that we've got to this point where we've got Aucklanders pitting against one another, and that's not how I don't think any of us want our citizens to be, because it's a horrible position for everybody to be in. So I think this is a way around the current constraints we have, the legal constraints that we didn't make the law, we don't make laws, that we can start to work together, heal, and hear what people have to say. Yes, it might be outside the submission process, but it gives us the opportunity to hear what you have to say and take that knowledge with us to our decisions in July, August. And I think that would be really valuable for all of us. And we might get to a point where we can come to agreement, and I think that's really important if we're going to go forward. So I am going to support this, and I've been very heartened in the last while to get a lot of emails saying, please don't withdraw, because we will not. I have got, and that's, sorry, I'm not making that up, I have got lots of emails from people saying, please don't withdraw from this process. People that say, I am 50 plus, I live in Sandringham, I live in Te Atatu, I live in one from St Heliers, Koe, a lot of people saying to me, they support the process. So I think that, there's a lot of views in this room, but in the end, if we keep going in a parallel process, we can gather all those views, we can sit down and we can take the heat out of this and actually really nut it out. I think that would be really useful, and I hope that everybody would support at least G and H. Thank you, Mr.
Very good. Councillor Culp.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'll keep it reasonably short. I think everyone wants to sort of head home soon, I'm sure. But probably like yourself, I know a number of us around this table, their day started at 5:25 this morning when we hit that southern motorway at Drury, and it was a 5-kilometre drive up the southern motorway to Takanini. But anyway, that aside, and you've heard from Councillor Cashmore the growth that's hitting the south, but we're not here to debate that tonight. We've spoken at length in the LTP. You've heard that mentioned this afternoon as well. And while some of them, people might have criticised me in the past for supporting the LTP, there was stuff in the LTP that I didn't support. But for the betterment of Auckland, New Zealand, and the globe, I did. A lot of that stuff sat with central government, but move on. That aside, Mr. Mayor, I have to say it's great to see a fantastic attendance around this table at this time of night. And all I can say is if the people of Auckland want to see what they get for their representation, maybe someone should do an OAA and see how many attendant committees that most of us attend.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. Irrelevance. I'll focus on the job at hand.
Yeah, please.
And anyway, look, that aside, Mr Mayor, look, it was raised this afternoon from my chair from Manarewa in regards to my positioning. And I have to say, been sitting around this table over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but more in particular the last week, and having our legal advice from our own legal team. Then, of course, having the independent legal team come in from Meredith and Connell, and you've heard about it this afternoon. It's critical. It's absolutely critical that we're at that table. You've heard from a number of councillors around this table of what's coming our way. And if we look, as highlighted, with Housing New Zealand, you've heard it. You know, we had 20.5% in there, mixed housing, urban. They want 66.5. The THAB 3%, they want 20.5. So to me, it's not rocket science. We've got to be there. And the legal evidence backs it up. If we come away from that process now, where will we be? I want to be able to hear that evidence, discuss that evidence, and then make decisions come August. That's my position, Mr Mayor. So it's fair to all. Thank you.
Councillor Chris.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd just like to start by thanking you for convening this extraordinary meeting. It didn't have to be convened, and you did that. I'd also like to acknowledge Deputy Mayor and Councillor Philippina for leading this important body of work. I'm also I'm one of the 4 mediating members, and we were probably the first off our beach towels after Christmas and back in the office dealing with literally hundreds of mediation emails from staff. We've been drowning in this. You would not believe what we've been addressing. And I take full responsibility and ownership of all the decisions around this that have been made to date, and the decision I will make here today. I'd also like to acknowledge the staff because they've come under a lot of pressure. We've got 90 planners working on this, 90 planners that haven't had a Christmas really. And it has been a huge demand on them. That's my opening. Look, to the focus of today is, for me, it is about the process. And look, that's not a throwaway for me. That's not a hide behind the door. That's not get out of jail. It is a process issue. Now, I am not going to couch that process issue argument with a whole lot of tangential merit arguments, because it is not about merit at this time. And there have been a lot of discussions around merit. For me, respectfully, members, they are irrelevant at this time. It is not about intensification or leafy suburbs or down the rail corridor in that place or this place. It is about the process. I'm an ardent supporter, like the Deputy Mayor, of not seeing this city just sprawl from the Brindewins to the Bombays, just this endless sea of rooftops. We cannot have that occur on our watch or set it up for somebody else's watch. And the land use planning rules of this place are in urgent need of a major transfusion. And there was always going to be a bit of blood on the tracks. That was inevitable. I'm also have pushed the public engagement policy at this council, and that's now adopted, and it's something we abide by, and I hold that pretty dearly. I've also pushed very strongly the need to lock in and strengthen our design assessment criteria, and they particularly apply to those denser zones like mixed housing, suburban and urban. They don't apply to the single house zone, so be wary of that one. I'm also really, for me, carrying the confidence of the public is really critical. That's a tough task for us, and we've had some tough tasks in this last 2.5 years. But wherever possible, you do your damnedest to carry the public with you, and I'm a fan of that good process to enable that. And good process, when you have a good process, your outcome is more likely to endure. not just the next week or months, but years and decades. And future generations will come and adopt and own that outcome because it has been through a good process. They can see the history. And previously, I have erred in my decision making, I have to say, and put too much weight on merit. And I am now correcting myself, and I realise I need to look at the process. And in recent days, that question of process has been given much more of my weighting. At the core of that good process is that principle that's been recited here of natural justice. And the opportunity for public participation as we have enabled through our public engagement policy. It's a policy, remember, that we do it that way. And that principle is further enshrined in case law. Now, this case law has been referred to. It goes back to 2003, and it's Clearwater versus Christchurch City Council it was, or Environment Canterbury, one of those. And it was that principle in case law around the right to be heard, where there are significant changes being proposed. And that was in the High Court, it wasn't in a lower court. So you're talking about, 13-year-old case law that hasn't been updated, it's still sitting there, and all the barristers will be referring to it, and our Judge Kirkpatrick has referred to it. Auckland Council's geographic zone changes, they are without doubt, they are significant departures from the notified document. You just can't get away from it. And they do attempt to alter the plan substantially. That's the bottom line. That's the truth of it. And while the IHP does remind us about them ensuring natural justice and etc. will occur, it's incumbent upon this council to also hold that sign up, that natural justice sign up. It is not just for another party, it is for all. Now, our evidence pertaining to the zoning changes, that they do impact the rights of those that are potentially affected. Not necessarily directly affected, but potentially affected. And there are submitters and further submitters who are in the ring. They're participating. But there are those that have been caught out who are not in that category, who can't participate. And I've looked at that, and Council's function at this time, I believe, is more to assess the relief sought through submissions rather than come out with a radical change of the notified. And it's been suggested that those non-submitters might enjoy appeal rights. Yep, it's in the law, and they can do that. And in 2004, I came into local government. I was elected to local government after being tapped on the shoulder, after chairing a group, an environmental and community group that went to the High Court and the Environment Court. And I'm $20,000 or $30,000 poorer because of the experience, but we had a good outcome. But I know what the cost is to go appeal. It is phenomenal. It's tens of thousands of dollars if it's a big subject like we were fighting at that time. But I've just done a quick, and it's a very cursory desktop analysis of costs to go appeal. And to go appeal in the Environment Court, just to brief a planner is just to get in the door is going to be your $500, ka-chink. And a very basic appeal document will cost you $1,000. I'm talking real discount here. And then to lodge it, your lodgement fee is $500. So you're up to $2,000 already. And if you want to go to the court itself and you want to hire at least one expert, you won't get any change out of another $2,000. And that's the warehouse discount variety. And so I would say you're up for about $6,000 minimum. That's what it costs. Now, on the other hand, it's been suggested you could attach to another group. Now, you can use Section 274, or you can ask them to represent you. Now, I think it's unrealistic to ask without some kind of formal documentation between the parties. And I think that lead appellant would be hard-pressed to adopt the appeal of somebody on a local spot zone when they are dealing with higher-level principal issues. They would be absolutely consumed with hundreds, possibly thousands, of individuals fighting what's over their back fence when the appellant is actually dealing with a much larger principled case. So you can also attach as a 274, as I mentioned, but that is also problematic. When you're a 274 attached to an appellant, the appellant is in control, absolute control, and the 274 is secondary. And the last thing this council needs come later in the year is hundreds of appellants and thousands of Section 274 holders. Imagine that. We would be in the court for years. It would be, well, others correct me, but it would be a very long time. So you've got a big body of work. We've all got a big body of work to land in August. I would hope that we can land that big body of work with some greater buy-in from the community. There are risks in withdrawing, and I've identified some serious risks, and I've weighed them all up. There is risk of the evidence that has already been lodged on our part and seen being adopted by other submitters. That's a risk. There's the risk that the further submissions of other parties responding to our evidence, they do not fall away. We've been told that by our Director of Legal.